just stop this recording. Oh, wait, no. Let me say bye to the people first. Welcome back to another episode of I Am Ready for Love with Kanissa and Jerome and Kanissa. And today I have my cousin Lorraine and her husband, and they're going to be talking to us a little bit about some stuff that Lorraine had experienced and how they got through it. All right, so Lorraine and Steven.
So so I'm Lorraine Clark, married to Steven Clark for how long have we been married? 16 years. I'm not very good at remembering. And we've been together for 18 years this year. He's looking at me like that because he knows that I'm not very good at this. And we have 4 children, and just loving life.
Oh, veterans in this marriage thing.
No.
Yeah, so my name's Steve. Yes, we've been married for over 16 years because next year will be 17, so it's past the 16 mark. But anyway, what do you know about me? I work with young people, have done for 20 odd years, in a variety of settings. So in the justice system, in the education system, and separately for a short period in the care system as well. I also occasionally give talks to young people in mainly secondary education around gang awareness, exploitation and things like that. And right now I'm just enjoying the holidays. It's been a long period off. Hopefully we're going back to some form of work in September.
It's COVID business, man.
Tell me.
Annoying.
Tell me.
Luckily I have a healthy marriage, so I don't mind being off with my husband for 3 months. I didn't say I also work with young people in arrange different education, blah blah, things like that. So last year, November 2019, I launched an organisation called Behind the Mask of Mum and Dad, which was is aimed at helping people deal with trauma. I told my story of historical sexual abuse. And really, the organisation is to help people that have been through that type of trauma, really. I just gave my story, and it went really well. So my story is that when I was age 4, I was sexually abused by a family member. And that went on for a period of 4 years. I think that's when I stopped going to that family member's home, and it happened for a long time.
So having gone through that and coming up in your teens and your 20s and all of that, did it affect any of your relationships, whether it be romantic relationships or just relationships with persons of the same gender as that person?
Yeah, so it affected my life right through from being a teenager in my 20s, 30s. It just affected every area of my life. Building friendships, whether with the opposite sex or the same sex as my abuser. friendships wasn't something that I found easy to hold on to, cling on to. It made me a rebellious teenager. I was really naughty at school. And that's where my story first came out, when I was at school, because my behaviour was just a bit erratic. However, I was in top sets for everything and did well at school, but in terms of telling me what to do and things like that, no. And then it was one day when it just went a little bit too far, and then I broke down in school, and that's how it first came out, and that's how my family heard about it.
What exactly happened? Like, how did it exactly affect the relationship?
So it would be better for me to speak about my relationship with men. So my relationship with men was one of, I became very promiscuous. So I ended up sleeping with everybody and anybody. Slept with over 20 people in a short period of time, in my teens to my 20s, and didn't really feel no way about it. Weren't really trying to get into a strong relationship and have a man. Didn't really think I was worthy enough, really. Knowing now, at the time I just thought I was just doing what I was doing, but really it was about my self-worth, and my self-esteem was probably on the floor. So then I just allowed myself to be an object, really, for these men, because that's what I thought I deserved. So basically I was just very, very promiscuous and didn't care about it, and that is all to do with self-worth. And then I met Steven. Steven was a friend of mine for many years before we got married, but even that relationship was affected at the beginning.
So how did you tell Steven that, listen, this is the deal?
Now, I can't remember if I had told you as a friend.
But basically what happened was she used to come and visit me at my mum's house at the time, which was not too far from my local church anyway. I think we had ordered takeaway, something to eat, and we were just talking. And she just built up to it in the conversation that we were having, and then she disclosed that she'd been abused. Now, for me, there was no real shock on my behalf, simply because already by that time, while I've been in church and prior, people had, for various reasons, disclosed to me that they've suffered some form of abuse, whether it be sexual or physical or emotional. So it wasn't a shock. What was interesting after that is probably I wondered why she chose that moment and not other moments, because she could have said it really earlier, but she chose that moment for whatever reason. But it didn't make me surprised or shocked or back off. Like I said, I've been accustomed to that, and even since then people have disclosed abuse. Abuse is a common thing, more common than we know. In the black community though, it's a bit different, because we don't talk to police. We don't tell our business outside, because culture says you don't bring the family business outside. We don't want to deal with the police because of how they treat our young men, but in abuse cases we have to deal with them. And so we've got to learn ourselves when we need to engage them and when we need to look at other alternative routes. But when it's a crime, we have to engage the police because it's a criminal offence.
So when you guys decided that you were going to be in a relationship, was it hard to trust? Were there any trust issues in there from the trauma? Massive
trust issues. So I had an issue with trusting Steven around my child, because I already had a child before I met Steven. So I would let him. There was a period where I was going to choir practice, So Steven would help me and look after my eldest daughter. And what I used to do is I used to come in quietly and creep up the stairs, just to see what was going on. And that happened quite a lot, didn't it, Steve? And
Not a lot. Not often.
Not often, but enough for me, I think. And I didn't think Steve knew what I was actually doing, but he did. Without me even saying, you said you knew.
Yeah, because I think I saw her doing it one time. But it wasn't only that. It was comments about like me possibly cheating and stuff like that. So there would be comments made by her that the assumption would be like, if anyone would be cheating, it would be me. And yeah, that had some effect. It was almost like you're preempting that I'm going to do this. And in some respects, some of the thoughts that came into my head is I might as well do it then, because you're preempting. And that's something I think ladies have to learn. Don't preempt these things, because some men will use it as an excuse to do it if they're looking to do it. And so what you just need to do is thoughts like that you hold unless you have reasonable suspicion that the other person is doing something like that.
So when she would say that, how did you find the strength within to not just go off and just do the things?
You love.
Yeah, you could say that I love you, but you know what though? I think it's more than just that, because it still means that I have to know how to conduct myself. And I'm going to be honest, and I said it's not easy, because you can be in love and all those things. It doesn't mean that a lady might not come by and there'll be something about that person you're attracted to. I think really the constraints that were upon me were spiritual constraints. And what I mean by that, spiritual, and not to sound mystic, is just simply that I believe in God and I believe in what the Bible says and the consequences of actions that come from what you do. And those things constrain me from doing things that you know that are wrong to do, but sometimes you might be tempted to do. But with those constraints that held me firm where I was.
So how did you handle being watched, like being crept upon?
Do you know, if I'm honest, I've got this philosophy. If I'm not doing wrong, I don't care who's watching me.
Right.
If I was doing wrong, then it's a problem. But I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just thought that she needed to learn to trust me, or don't allow me in this position to look after your child. That's
so
how
did
you
you
feel.
have a conversation around that?
You know, good question.
I don't think we
She
did.
just started to behave.
Yeah.
I don't think we did, because I would have recalled that, and I don't recall
Knowing
anything around that.
knowing Steven, he would have put a one-liner in there that would just make me know, okay, time to fix up, knowing Steve. But yeah, that was something that was really difficult for me, I think, because Steve was probably the second man I had allowed to be around my child, but in this way. And I knew it was going to be something that was going to continue, and we were going to be together forever, sort of thing. So
how did you know? Because you said before that you were just doing you. So how did you know that this was the person, like, okay, I'm going to settle down now?
Yeah, because by the time I met Steve like this, I was a born-again Christian. So I gave my life to God, and I had decided that this is the life that I was going to now live. So me and Stephen became good friends, because before I was a Christian, I knew about Stephen, couldn't stand him, and wasn't friends with him. But we both became Christians or started going to the same church at a similar time, I think. Similar, and we just got to know each other. We became like besties, didn't we? Going to the cinema together and all sorts. I mean, we were generally just friends at that stage. Nothing, I didn't seem like that. There was three of us, another friend of ours. So the three of us, and Steve and this other person used to always encourage me and things like that. And we were that close that when Stephen's been engaged before, and when Stephen was engaged, him and his fiance came round, and things like that. So we were just like good friends, and yeah, he used to always seem to know if I may have been dropping off a little bit. And
wasn't that awkward?
When
you guys are just friends, and then he was engaged, and now you guys are together.
No, it wasn't. No. Well, that person is not in the on the scene one bit. But no, we're awkward. It wasn't, because like we're like just friends, and then so if I was seeing someone, not that I was, then I would like. Or if I was going through, there was times that I might have been going through stuff with someone, and Steve would put me straight on
the right track.
Yeah.
But there was a considerable period between that relationship and this one started, so it wasn't like a
long as years.
A significant issue. Plus, that person was not in the city at the time; they were studying elsewhere. So either way, it wasn't an issue at all.
Yeah.
So how are things now? Like, how is the trust, and are you still dealing with the trauma, or is that gone and done and dusted now?
Trust is not an issue anymore. That was sorted a long time ago. Dealing with the trauma, that's something that's going to always be something that I'll have to deal with. And currently I'm writing the book, and that in itself brings things up. So just like the other day when I was writing, the chapter that I was writing about is a bit in depth and goes into detail. So I had to pause, and I was a little bit upset. I didn't start crying or anything. But so I'm always going to be dealing with it. But it's how I deal with it is different to how I used to deal with it.
So when your daughters start to date, are you gonna be like watching the guys? Like, what you doing?
See, I think it's about education. So our eldest daughter's 13. I've already begun the process of talking about what sort of man and men she should be looking at, the quality that she should be looking for, and the reason why I've started that process now, because I know teenagers can often do things and you don't know as parents. You're not always around them, you're not always around their conversations, and we know that teenagers will speak a different language with their friends than when they're at home. So because of those things, I've already started that process. I'm hoping and praying that by the time she's age of being independent and being an adult, she can then use that information and knowledge to choose the right partner at the right time. But you never know in these things. I've just had to trust God ultimately, and what I'm telling her that she's able to apply and use. So literally it's about like making sure you're with a guy who loves you for you, but that means getting to know him, listening to conversations, able to be judging certain things. So for example, if the guy had lots of female friends and is always around them, but you can't meet them, maybe that's something that you should consider and think about and process before you start getting any deeper. So it's just things like that, little nuggets every now and again. I just have a conversation, then I just back off and leave it, then I go back in, have a conversation, because it's not even just about relationships with men. I think relationships with people in general, you have to educate your children on, and then out of that you talk about opposite relationships with men or women, whatever.
Okay, so how have you equipped them to either deal with it possibly happening, or if it happens you can come and talk to me kind of thing? Like, how have you dealt with that side of it, or have you dealt with it at all?
So for me, with our eldest, who is 22, I shared with her what had happened. So she's always been aware of it, and she knows my stance on those things. With our 13-year-old, I haven't shared it with her. Not yet. We don't know when. I'll share that with her because, yeah, it's really it's a bit sensitive. So, and I don't think she's ready for that conversation yet. She might actually be now, but we didn't at first, did we? No.
I think she'd be ready for it. See, I don't think you can wait on these things because the world is changing. It's like what happened with George Floyd. That's not something children want to be seeing, but unfortunately, it's around and it's going to so much. They're going to see it, so you're going to have to expose them to something, because if you don't, something or someone will.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's even that sort of thing, but my story. Before I put the book out, I'm going to have to tell her. I was able to get through the launch without telling her. And because we did mention it, I did mention, do you think now is the time? But it weren't. But I think we're coming to that time. I think she probably could handle it now.
Have you spoken about like good touch, bad touch without touching on your experience?
Yeah. We've done that a long time ago. With all the kids. So the youngest is 3, and he's had that. I've had that conversation with her. 6-year-old, we've had that conversation with him. So we've only got one boy, but it's still important to have that conversation with him too. So yeah, that's something you do way early.
Okay, and in their growing up process, are you treating them differently based on their genders?
Not on the genders, really. But in terms of them growing up, I don't treat them different. Like things that are allowed to happen. For example, sleepovers don't happen for any of them. Never has done, and actually never will. They stay at grandparents' house, and I think that's about it. I think we treat our son differently, just because he's a boy, and I always wanted a boy, and I'm very, yes, my son, strong, rough, tumble. So we do have different approaches with all of them, not just down to gender, because they are all different. So even though they come from the same people, me and Steven, that they are all generally different. So we treat them differently according to that. No child is the same. And working with children for over 20 years, you get to see that you can be, I've taught a whole family and see how different they are. And you can't just, because the brother might have been naughty or the sister might have been naughty or clever, don't mean that the sibling will be. So we have to treat them as individuals, not as sibling groups. So we have basics are all the same. What goes in this house and things like that, that's all the same. But certain things are different based on gender and based on individuality.
So are friends allowed to come over for sleepovers?
No. So both me and Steve, as you've heard, have worked with children and young people for X amount of years, but I don't really like lots of children in the house. I know I have 4 kids, but I don't know. So we don't have children over here. I was just saying that I don't let our children stay out apart from grandparents, and I don't have kids around. I just don't do sleepovers in any way, shape or form.
I mean, I suppose if you had a spare room, then yeah, we could do that, but we don't have a spare room. But like cousins will come in a day with their parents and stuff like that, but we don't have sleepovers. I'm not big on them, to be honest with you, anyway.
Yeah, because kids be doing stuff too.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, so I think that there's only so much you can control, but I think things like that, even my own experiences when I was young, I slept over, but like you say, you behave differently according to the environment you're in. So I think for me, I just don't do it.
And will you be having a talk with your son about not touching nobody's kids? Like,
oh yeah,
already had it.
Oh yeah,
already had it. Like, I think what happened was when he was at his nursery, one of the staff members would play music like on a Friday as a treat, and they ended up playing Michael Jackson, and he enjoyed the music and liked it and wanted to get us to play it at home. So after I think initially we played it, but then the documentary about what he alleged to have done came out. And then I kind of thought about it and thought, I don't feel so comfortable playing the music in my house anymore. So just recently I had to sit down with him and say to him, without going into detail obviously, but just to say that we're not going to be playing his music because some information's come up that is alleged to have done things to children in the past that would be deemed harmful and evil and not something that would be good for him to hear. So he wanted to know more, so I had to explain more without going into detail. But he understood by the end of the conversation that it was alleged that Michael Jackson had touched children in places he shouldn't be touching. And then I had to tell him, you do not allow anybody to do that to you. And you don't do it to anyone else. And I even had to say to him that if you're ever anywhere and somebody says to you, I want to speak to you in private, you don't go anywhere in private, you stay where you are. If you don't feel comfortable, you say no, I have to tell my parents. And that's a continual conversation we'll have to have with him. So it's drummed in that he doesn't do that and he doesn't allow people to do that to him where possible.
Right.
And he understood it. He understood it because then afterwards went to my mum's and they said, we don't play Michael Jackson because he touches people on the business.
Oh my God!
Not that we actually said those words, but I know. Yeah.
You know, at least he got it. You know what I mean? That's it.
Yeah, at least he got this. All right. So, what advice would you give to parents that have kids that have been abused and maybe they know or don't know, or parents that have been abused themselves and try to over shelter?
Yeah, so the second point that you made about parents that may try and over shelter, if I was giving advice to someone like that, I'd definitely tell them to check themselves and to if they haven't had counselling, I would advise trying that, and also speak about the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the consequences, but the harm that over protectiveness can do, especially if the parent's not at a place where they want to share it. Then they need to just sort of hold back. I understand it because I've been there, but it's really important for them to deal with themselves and not to put anything onto the children unnecessarily. And the other point of parents who have had children that have been abused.
Yeah, they know or maybe don't know.
Well, if they don't know, there's nothing they can do. But if they do know, it's a conversation that they have to have and just support them, because even though that can be hard to do, it can be hard for a parent to support a child that has been abused. And I know that from my own story and what happened to me. Yeah. And it can be hard because if it's a family member, then it's a family member of one of your parents, isn't it? And it's how do we deal with that, really? For me, I would say, well, I'd lock them off, not interested, not talking to them, but not everyone will do that. And having parents of that Caribbean, again, it can make it very, very difficult. And I think in the Caribbean as well, we have a tough love thing, get on with it sort of attitude.
Get over it.
Get over it. Exactly. So therefore, that can be really difficult, but I would definitely tell parents to support your children, see where they need support as well. Look at the behavior, check the behavior. Why are they behaving out of character? Is this normal? Is it related to that? Don't tell the child that it's related to that. You don't want to put that in those words into their mouth, but just check what is this really about? What's the deeper root cause? And for parents who have children acting out and don't know if that child's been abused, maybe have a little, searching, look, a bit of a conversation, try and tease it out of them if that's what's happened. But yeah, it's all about speaking.
I think as well, it's you said before the parents don't know. I think before even that, if you're a parent and you don't really sit down with your children and talk about these things, then you have to begin that process, because if you don't talk, the likelihood is, depending on how that child sees the world, they either won't disclose anything or they're going to keep it in. So I think the first point is have an environment where you can have conversations about the issues in the world. And obviously there's some things you just, that I wouldn't talk to, say, a 4-year-old about everything to do with George Floyd, but if he's a young black boy, you can have to know some things. So you have to have conversation. I think the other thing is, if you suspect but have no evidence, you have to observe, monitor, maybe speak with the school to see how they're behaving in school. And you know what, if there's places that they go to, just make sure you're with them. I don't believe, where possible anyway, where you drop off a young child somewhere and then leave them on their own, unless you know the person who's running the organization and you trust the systems that they have. You can't trust everyone, and you can't rely on everyone either. But I think it's about observing. It's like building a picture. You can't just, not every child discloses. Most children won't disclose because of the pressures of the event, the trauma. Maybe they feel ashamed and they can't say anything. Maybe they've been bullied and harassed to not say anything, and all those things. So you have to build a picture. But usually it comes out in the behavior in some way or some form.
Definitely.
And so, for example, when I worked in youth justice, if you had a child that was setting fires or harming animals, more often than not, the case would be that that child was expressing themselves in that way because of previous abuse. Not in every case, but in some cases. And so that's more of an easy example. There's other behaviours that can be built from that are not so clear cut. And it's about speaking to people. Speak to people that you trust in your community who might know more. They might be professionals. Speak to your GP. All these things, just to kind of get a picture built up before you come to the point of asking questions. But if you ask the question, you might not get an answer straight away, but then just provide the avenues so that if they are ready to disclose, then they can do it when they're ready.
Okay. And for couples that are out there like you guys, where one of them has gone through it, how do you advise them about caring for that person and being cared for by someone else? So on both.
Yeah, so So it's all about talking, being transparent as well, not holding back, if you're the person that has been abused, then it's letting that person know exactly how certain things make you feel. How certain things make you feel and how it really does affect you. Because if you're not open, then how can that person support you? They can't guess. You may have told them what's happened, but just because you told them what's happened, it doesn't mean that they have the tools to support you or know how to support you. So, for example, I told Steve before we got married, Steve had some counselling to help him know how to deal with it. I think he even read a book, things like that. So sometimes it's about going above and beyond for your spouse, for that other person, and that's what Steve did off his own back. But as you can see, Steve's a talker, so he likes to know, he wants the full information, he wants to do what can be done. So it's really important to give the person as much information as possible, which will help equip them, will help, to just help them to help you. And as for the person helping, so for example, my husband, to be patient as well, because things will keep happening that you've already spoke about. I may display behaviours that we've spoken about already and keep displaying those behaviours which become a bit tiresome. So that person has to learn how to be patient and think one day they're going to get it. One day they're not going to be like this. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Can't speak for C now because he's gone out to deal with it. But I'm sure he's got a good answer for that. He's back now, so he can say what he thinks.
I can't remember the question.
The question was...
Advise someone in your position that has a partner that has been through it.
What I'm going to say might not what they expect to hear, but I would say you need to consider if you're able to manage the situation, but it's not easy to manage. You need to consider, are you able to live with dealing with that? Because somebody who's been through that, how can I put it? Over time, it may show its head less and less, but it may show its head. And it can be frustrating at times when it does. It can be draining. It can be stressful. But it's the way it impacts you, see. So for example, one of the issues that we had, and some respects still have, is around finances, and that's because of the impact it's had on Lorraine's finances. And what people don't know is, people don't connect abuse and finances, but actually there's a correlation between them. And somebody who's been abused can spend money frivolously because they're trying to plug that gap of that emptiness that they feel, which is the connection to the abuse. But the finances will never cover that, and so it just perpetuates that situation. And so it's about looking at things from that perspective, being honest, talk about how you feel as well, and then take steady steps like that. Because I think if you just go, oh, love is all we need, I'm sorry, but when stress comes and pressure and everything else, love might not be that strong a bridge to carry things over. So you've got to be honest. I'm an honest person. If I don't like something, I'm saying it. If I don't want to be in something, I'm saying it. And I've always been that way. I believe that's the best thing to be. Just be honest. But people say, oh, but we might break someone's heart. Listen, honesty never killed anybody. What kills people is abuse and violence and anger and all those things. We need more honesty in the world. And unfortunately, people can't handle honesty. And that's because of a lack of maturity, life experience, and all other issues. So I think being honest, but sharing it in a way where not a bitter pill, but a pill that you can swallow, is the best way for couples where, especially if it's early in a relationship and they're finding their way, and then if this comes up, you have to talk about it and be honest in your discussions.
And do you guys have anything else you want to add?
Buy the book when it comes out.
I would say this though. I would say that the black community specifically have to be more honest, because abuse is everywhere. And what I mean by that is every organization will have a member of the staff who would have been abused. Every school will have a teaching staff member and children who've been abused. Every member in church and various organizations will have congregational members who have been abused. Staff would have been in that as well. The black community specifically needs to talk more about this. We don't talk about it enough. We talk about racism more for obvious reasons, but we don't talk about this. And I think at some stage we need to start talking about this more, because the impact of it is similar to racism in the sense of it robs people of what their potential could be or should have been, but also it's like a heavy chain around people's necks. And even though these are two different issues that affect black people, they have similar effects in the sense of the trauma it can bring, the burden of it. Like one takes away privilege because of race, but in one sense you can take away the privilege from a person who's been abused because they can no longer function normally because of that mental trauma, and so they have no voice for themselves. So their privilege is gone. That privilege of being to empower yourself, to express yourself, can be robbed. And so there are issues that need to be tackled in some way now. In what way that's going to come out, it probably means in schools, in churches, those private spaces like churches and places like that, youth clubs or whatever you call them today, need to have that open space to talk. Because if someone discloses, then it's about them, the next process of. It's like, for example, in the black community, we don't want to phone police or social services because of we don't want the outside agency to come in. But if you hold it under the cover, you're making things worse. So it's about using all the agencies at the appropriate time so that you get them to do their role in helping that person address the issues that they face.
And a lot of churches don't talk about it either. And most of them that do even try to talk about it just suggest prayer and not counseling as well.
See, the problem is, prayer, yes, is good, but I think in this situation, you pray for wisdom on how to deal with these issues. And I want to be very honest, I think the church needs to go back to a place of not just preaching, I'm going to just preach about sin today and whatever, but preaching about things that affect people too. When Jesus spoke, he spoke about the things that affected people as well as expressing the kingdom of God. So we can't be doing things the old way anymore. COVID has shown that, you know what, you can't do things the old way no more. Technology can play a part in some things, but if I was a pastor, I would be preaching about this stuff, because I would be saying, actually, if you read your Bible, the Bible has never hidden the abuse that certain individuals did to family members or strangers or whatever. It never hides those things. So the question has to be asked, why did God not choose to hide that? He didn't choose to hide it because he wanted to express and show that, you know what, these are the issues that need to be addressed, but also these are the behaviors that people can have even if they profess to be following God, as well as people outside of church. And so it's not like people in church don't do it, they do. And then obviously people go, but you're supposed to be a Christian. It's a label. A man following God chooses not to do those things because he knows of the constraints. Remember I said earlier about those constraints. It's those constraints that you're aware of that hold you in. However, you still have free will to choose what you want to do. Now, when you understand those things, you can then now start applying the wisdom of God to your life. But if we don't preach this stuff, people are just finding out the hard way.
Yep. And then end up probably blaming God himself. Like, how come you let this happen?
Well, that's a common thing. If God loved me or whatever, why did this abuse happen? That's what I'm saying. If you preach, then they'd understand that it's because of the sinfulness of man, that man and wickedness in his heart and other issues will cause a person to do something else wicked to somebody else.
Hurt people.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, thank you guys so much for talking to me. I really learned a lot, because that point that you gave about affecting your finances, I didn't even think about that part, that it can affect other parts like your finances. Because we don't think about that.
Yeah, we spoke about that a lot at the event. A lot of that we spoke about how it affects other areas of your life, not just relationships. But I didn't put two and two. I didn't correlate the two. What's that got to do with it? That's just an excuse. But like I said before, Steve married me. He read, he did X, Y, and Z, so he could understand. Now I get it, but I didn't at first. So yeah.
So the person who has been abused might not even notice that this is what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah.
You were about to say something?
Yeah, go on, Steve.
No, I was going to say, it's like the classic one is, I know you see this in London, and people in Birmingham will see it, people in Manchester, Liverpool, whatever. You'll be walking down the street, you'll see a person acting real strange, you go, yo, that person is mad, look at them, yeah? And we'll, especially as a young person, you'll laugh and go, yo, look at that. But then what you don't know, because it's not possible for you to know, because you don't know the individual, is that person has been through some trauma or abuse, and that's why they've ended up acting that way, because they've had a mental breakdown because of the abuse. And it's about understanding that. But you can't know that until you have a connection with the person and understand more.
Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys learned something. If you or anybody you know is going through this, send this video to them, or find other ways that you can help out. If you personally cannot be there and you don't know what to do for them, then ensure that you try to help them to find that person that they can go to and get the help that they need. And I want to thank Steven and Lorraine for coming on. All right, and thank you guys again for watching. I am ready for love, to love myself, to love others, and to allow someone else to love me. Thank you guys.